Tips with Toni. Tips with Toni. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Toni. Tips with Toni. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Toni. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Toni podcast. I'm Toni Marinucci, a registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. Did you know that almost half of Americans are vitamin D deficient? It's true. I actually am deficient in vitamin D as well. I take a supplement every single day prescribed by my doctor, and it helps to, bring my energy up. So if you're feeling really tired, groggy, there's even some studies showing that if you're trying to lose weight and not seeing any results, it could be that you're deficient in a vitamin, which makes sense, right? Your body's not working at its optimal capacity if there's a deficiency. So before I kind of explain how to recognize the signs and symptoms, I always encourage people to go to the doctor and get blood work done so you know, in fact, if you actually are deficient. Because if you're not, then there's really no point in taking any sort of supplement or anything at all. And, you don't want to just be buying supplements just because, I told you to, or because you think that you might be deficient. We never want to take any sort of medication or supplement unless it's absolutely necessary. We do, however, want to make sure that you are consuming foods that are adequate in vitamin D, because if you're not, then you could be at risk for developing that deficiency since it is so common. Most people at risk for vitamin D deficiency usually live in colder climates, or basically climates that don't see the sun. I live in New York, and you would think that it's, April. I'm recording this, it's April 7th, it's spring, and the sun's actually out today, but this is like the first sunny day in a really long time. So it's been taking a while for spring to come out. We've had a very, very long winter, and it's been inside all the time and not exposed to natural UV rays, which is actually the most absorbable form of vitamin D. So that's why it's difficult to take in. Another reason why it might be difficult if you live in a certain climate where there's not adequate amount of sunlight is not just because maybe you're not in the sun enough, but actually if we're not consuming foods that are rich in calcium, things like your leafy green vegetables, then you're not going to absorb the vitamin D. So it's really important to have a diet that's adequate in vitamin D, to get enough sunlight, and to possibly take a supplement if you're deficient. Now, before I kind of talk about the specifics of that, I kind of wanted to just shed some light on the benefits of consuming adequate amounts. So there's studies showing that if you consume enough vitamin D, you could be potentially putting yourself at a lower risk of developing things like bone cancer, other cancers, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, even breast cancer, colon cancer. Now, I will say, and I've said this like a number of times, it's never really, one vitamin or mineral or even one food that's going to make or break your diet and prevent you from getting these sort of illnesses and diseases. It's usually a lifestyle factor. So if you think about the foods that are adequate in vitamin D and calcium and antioxidants that help you to defend things like cancer, there are things like fish and walnuts, and your dark leafy greens are a great source of calcium, and things like flax seeds and chia seeds. I mean, these are all really nutrient-dense foods, so it makes sense that if we consume these foods in high quantities, then we'll be at a lower risk for developing these diseases. Now, going into a little bit, if you feel like you're not consuming enough of those foods, particularly dairy, I'd say if you're someone who's a vegan or has irritable bowel disease or ulcerative colitis, or maybe you maybe you have a dairy allergy or intolerance, then you might be lacking the other foods that are very rich in calcium and vitamin D and might not be getting adequate amounts. So what do you do? So definitely get blood work done. If you are going to take a supplement, the standards are pretty they're not really standards quite yet. But in general, if you're under the age of 50, then you want to be taking anywhere from like some standards say 200 IUs to about 800 IUs per day, when other standards would tell you a little bit more. So you can either go up to 1,000 IUs per day. And if you're over 50, you don't want to take a minimum of about 600 IUs per day. And that would be in supplement form. Now, never forgetting to also make sure you're including those foods that are rich in vitamin D and calcium. Now, once I actually posted about this topic on my Instagram, and I actually made a case saying that I truly believe that vitamin D from the sun, getting it from the UV rays, is going to be the best source, because if you just look at the diet, it's really difficult to get those foods, and some people just avoid dairy or they avoid fish, and so they can take a supplement, but even supplementation, it's in the food, the absorbability is kind of unclear of how much your body's actually going to utilize. So I made a case and said, it's all important, but getting out in the sunshine, I also think it's a great mood elevator. It's kind of a really, really great way to get in your vitamin D. Now, I got a lot of backlash from a couple people in regards to the fact that, what happens if you have really, really sensitive skin, you're fair skin, and then you're at risk for skin cancer, which was a valid question to ask. And so I was happy that someone kind of challenged me on that. So I wanted to talk about, if you are someone who's very fair skinned, you burn really easily, or no matter how long you stay out in the sun, you never get a tan, then yes, you are at a greater risk for skin cancer. And so what I'm going to say is, like anyone, you definitely want to get a little bit of sun without any sunscreen on, but you don't want to be out there for hours and hours on end until your skin is burned. So the general recommendation to get adequate amount of vitamin D would be 2 times a week. So just 2 times a week, going outside for anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes in between the hours of 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Without any sunscreen on, and making sure you're getting, access, the sun has access to your face, your arms, your legs, and maybe your back. And so if you're able to do that twice a week for about 5 to 30 minutes without any sunscreen, my guess is you're going to get enough vitamin D, and hopefully you don't burn. Now, if you do notice that your skin starts to burn, then put on some sort of SPF. The Academy of American Dermatology recommends about 30 SPF as a minimum. And when you put that on, there's even some studies that do show that you might still get a little bit of the sun in there, so you might still be able to get the benefits of the vitamin D. With that being said, I don't know if you've ever heard about tanning beds providing UV light, which they do, but tanning beds, no matter what your skin type, are an absolute no-no, and that's not how you want to be getting your vitamin D. That's probably going to increase your chances of developing skin cancer tenfold, and we definitely don't want that. I will say some really cool facts about some foods that contain vitamin E and vitamin C, like citrus fruits and avocados, your leafy greens. They have natural protective benefits against the sun. Now, I'm not saying eat those and then don't put on sunscreen. What I'm just saying is that in general, it kind of goes back to my point that I kind of drive home on a regular basis, is if you're eating a well-balanced diet, right? Lots of nutrient-dense foods loaded with antioxidants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, lean proteins. I mean, literally, your diet is just nutrient-dense, and you limit the things like that have a label that you can't pronounce, like what's on there and what's in the ingredients. And, if most of your diet's healthy, whole foods and pretty balanced, then you're in good shape. I would definitely say you're in good shape. You could still be, deficient in vitamin D. Like I said, like I actually am. I have a very well-balanced diet. But in general, I think, I'm taking care of my body the best way that I possibly can. And I think that if you kind of focus on that, naturally these deficiencies that keep coming up, like iron, vitamin B12, vitamin D, you won't have to worry so much. But once again, if you do find that when you go to the doctor you are deficient, there are ways to go about it. You can control it through food, through supplementation, and through natural, like something like vitamin D, just by taking a walk outside without any sunscreen, is adequate enough. So I hope that this was helpful. I know it can be a little bit complicated, eat this but not that, and go out in the sun but not too much sun. And it kind of goes back to that saying, everything in moderation, which I actually can't stand that saying, believe it or not. You're probably thinking, wow, Toni, you don't like the word moderation as a very balanced dietitian, but I actually don't, because the term moderation is very relative to the person. So what's moderate for me and what's moderate for you are completely different. And so having, Coca-Cola 2 to 3 times a week might be a moderate for you, but for me that would not fit in my diet. That's like not moderate at all. For me, that's excessive. And so there it goes on the line of like, it's kind of unclear what that definition is. So I always tell people, take a look at your diet, see where you can make improvements and start making changes. And if you need help or assistance, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help you in any way. If you were just told that you are vitamin D deficient and you're trying to figure out, how do I incorporate these foods? How much is enough? Should I take a supplement or not? Let me know. I'll be happy to assist you. So you can email me at tipswithtoni@gmail.com. You can message me on Instagram or Facebook. Ask me how I can help you. If you're not part of my healthy lifestyle support group on Facebook, definitely join. We are a wonderful community of people who are really done with dieting and understand that the benefits of a healthy lifestyle, and committing to that is going to be so much better than kind of jumping from diet to diet and always feeling frustrated like you're never making any progress. So if you can relate to that, you definitely want to be a part of our group. If you have any questions, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I am accepting applications right now, so you can find that link in the bio. So you fill out the application. We'll schedule a call to see if you're a good fit for my program and kind of go from there. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, just reach out. As always, you're listening to the Tips with Toni podcast. This is Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.